Good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Weaver, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm a member of the worship team, Worship Associates, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this virtual sacred space where we continue to draw closer in the spirit, open wide the circle of justice, cultivate a warm community, even as we maintain spatial distance to one another. UUCL, as we like to refer ourselves, is a beloved community in process. This means that we commit ourselves to being open and affirming, even as we recognize that we are not perfect at it. We're a beloved community in process, which means that we are striving to live lives in words and deeds that affirm Black Lives Matter. It means that we have affirmed for decades that love is divine, no matter who you love or marry. And it means that we are striving to affirm in practice that all ways of knowing and expressing gender are sacred. It also means that we hold for many ways of experiencing sacred truth. So we welcome you, whether you hold faith in God, nature, community, science, or all of the above deep in your heart, or whether you're not quite so sure what you believe, you are welcome here. You are welcome to journey and grow with us as we seek to make our lives and our world more full of both compassion and passion. We also send a warm welcome to anyone who is new here. Thank you for taking a brave step of checking us out. There are many ways to get involved here. We hope that you'll subscribe to our newsletter, the UUCL Love Letter, to find out more about what we do. We also invite you to join the special breakout room after the end of the service if you have questions that you would like to ask about Unitarian Universalism or this congregation. We'll now do our chalice lighting. Reverend Israel will now light our chalice, a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist values. Across the distance, the light from within me shines, sending all love to you all. Across the distance, your light is fuel that warms me and helps to keep my own light burning. Together, we keep the flames of community burning bright.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to this space and to this congregation. I'm Reverend Israel. I'm the minister here. And I invite you all now to come into this space of worship, which is really just a space of intentionality. Intentionality to spend some time thinking about and reflecting about what is most important in our lives and what we are doing here together, so that we can prepare when we are finished here in this hour to go out and to make those things so. So here in this space today, we will explore and think about our interdependence. What it means to think and to know that we desperately need each other on this journey of life. To know that we need each other to learn and grow in spirit and to love more fully in our lives. To know that there is something that we can find here in this communal space together, that we can discover, that we cannot do when we are alone. And because life is hard and challenging sometimes, we reflect upon the fact that we need each other to deal with all that life brings us, to hold each other, to comfort, and to celebrate. So here we are together in this space. I invite you this morning to Light a candle for yourself if you need to. And let that light hold for you all of the things that you are feeling today and all that you bring into this space. So as I light my candle, I say to you, come, whoever you are, into our space. Whether this is the first or the 500th time you are checking us out, whether you have had your heart broken 1,000 times, whether we have broken your heart, we can hold all of these things here in this space. For ours is no caravan of despair. Come, wherever you are.
Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. 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 Come, yet again come.
One of the ways that we learn and grow and hold each other is by sharing our stories in this space, so that we can receive the wisdom and the deep truths that come from them. And so that we can experience what some might call grace with each other. And so today, Luann Miller is going to share her story of receiving grace from this community and of giving it too.
Thank you. I want to tell you a story of the grace that is known as UUCL. To me, grace means receiving blessings, whether they are deserved or not. 4 years ago, driving home from a church meeting, I had a head-on car accident, breaking everything from my neck to shattering both my feet. I was not supposed to live, nor to ever walk. After a week in the ICU, and by the way, if you ever want to sneak into the ICU, talk to Ivana Morris, because that was my first laughter after the accident, was seeing Ivana there with a plant, knowing she was not supposed to be there. But after a week there, I went to Moravian Manor with huge boots and a horrible neck brace. But while I was there, I received blessings. I was blessed by the members of this church. I'm looking out at the gallery view and I'm seeing so many of you that were there for me. Phone calls, cards, presents, flowers. I was surrounded by a shawl of sunshine known as UUCL. Now, don't think the months there that I spent there were not hard. I had to learn to sit, I had to learn to stand, I had to learn how to walk. And if this is, of course, accompanied by the pain. But there were moments at 2 a.m. in the morning after the nurses would wake me up to give me my pills that it was hard to stop the despair. But always, always, there was something in my room, something in my heart from those who shared with me their love. I'm a long-term member of this church, and I'm almost ashamed to tell you, 47 years, that puts me right up there. But the pastoral associates was never a committee that I had served on. And yet when I needed them, when I needed this church, you were there. Now, I am not the only one in this church who has suffered pain, who has had great losses, who has cried the tears of despair. But I want to connect my story to this church. When the pandemic hit last winter, I became overwhelmed with the thought of this horrid isolation, this 2 o'clock in the morning feeling of the despair, the pain that many of our members and friends of UUCL would be feeling. Inspired by the grace that I received during my convalescence, I knew we needed to do something. And with a wonderful group of supporters, including the board, we started the Little Sparrows. The poem is a child's poem. God sees the little sparrow fall. It meets his tender view. If God so loved the little bird, I know he loves me too. Well, we didn't want any little sparrows falling in our congregation. So we called every member of the congregation. If we couldn't get them within 3 phone calls, then we emailed them. And if we still didn't get a response, then we sent a card or a note. We were trying very hard to contact every member of the congregation. And here's the punchline. Here's the irony of all of this. We were the ones giving the blessings. We were the ones making the phone calls. But it ended up that we received blessings. The gratitude, the kind words, meeting someone new, feeling empowered that we were able to answer questions and give assistance, took us out of our own isolation. One woman said, "This is the first call from the church that wasn't asking for money." Another caller told us that she would return to the church now because we had reached out to her. Now, we didn't solve problems, but we could direct people to the minister for the discretionary fund. And we did. We were able to do that. And one lady was so mad at the church for 3 years because of something we had done, but now maybe she'd come back. There was a gentleman who I enjoyed tremendously talking to, and he was very happy to have the phone call. And I now know the difference between an American Flyer train and a Lionel train. And if you want to know the difference, just let me know. Trains from the 50s. We were thanked for doing a simple act, a very simple act of reaching out. I'll move ahead to this autumn. And exactly 1 month after moving into my little retirement community, my husband died. Once again, the depths of despair. But I was surrounded by the love of this community in many forms. Neither time was my sorrow anticipated, and neither time was the amount of grace that I was to receive. I hadn't thought about the pastoral care associates, now the caring team, much 5 years ago. But boy, do I realize now how much we need them. In fact, maybe we should change our paradigm in this church. Maybe we should all be members of the caring team so that we are continually spreading and receiving grace. The Little Sparrows will be calling again after the holidays. We'll start up in January, a very cold, a very lonely, a very pandemic-laden month. But we do need more sparrows. So if you can spare some time and want to share some grace, you're welcome to become a sparrow. Just call me or email me. Edward Hale once wrote, I am only one, but still I am one. And I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Thank you.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home.
We all need to find a little grace from time to time with one another. And so here we are together in this place, virtually, but we are still deeply connected to one another by the deep well of community that we share. When we come here, bringing all that we carry in our lives, we seek people to celebrate with, people to mourn with, people to help us make sense of everything that goes on in our lives when it doesn't make sense. When we arrive confused and sad and happy and everything in between, with all of the truths that we carry from our lives, complex as they are. And we find that maybe from time to time, we cannot make everything right in each other's lives, but we can at least be there for one another. And we can take our truths and we can cast them into this deep, cleansing, and warm well of community. I put warm water in here today. It's the water from our water ceremony. If you could feel this bowl, you would see how heavy it is in my arms today. Heavy with all that we bring here. But if you look, you can see that there are many stones and shells in here. Some of them are touching each other and some aren't, but there is space in between those stones. And I know that if I were to pour some sand in there, it would fill in all the cracks. But instead, in this bowl, the water flows in between the stones, connecting them to one another and washing them and cleansing them and soothing them in this well together. And this here is like our community. We are all held together in the same space. What we bring truly matters, for it is our truths. And there is always room for more. Always room for filling in the cracks in between. And so for all that you bring, that we carry here in this space, I invite you to join me in the spirit of meditation. To let yourself settle into a comfortable position and to close your eyes if you wish, or soften your gaze. And to think about snowfall, freshly fallen snow. Have you ever gone for a walk in the snow and noticed that after it snows, the trees bear the weight of the snow? Especially when it's a wet snow. If you notice the limbs of trees when we have a very wet snow, like we just did, they become heavy and laden, drooping, and bending so heavy that it appears sometimes that they may break. And sometimes they do. But slowly and surely the snow does melt. And sometimes a refreshing wind comes by and shakes the branches and lets the snow fall and loosen and drip and come to the ground and return to the earth as water. Sometimes, my friends, we feel like those branches of the trees after a heavy snowfall. Like what we carry is so very heavy. Like we may almost break. But it is important to know that sometimes we need to, and we can, with the help of others, to loosen a little bit and let the snow fall down. And to shake it off. To know that we do not need to carry the weight of the entire world on our branches and in our hearts. That we can seek help from others in doing so. And so I share with you now this song. Loosen, loosen, baby, and you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, and you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Let go, let go. Let go. Let us sing Amen together for Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Our weekly offering is a spiritual practice where we give in order to say yes to our values. We take up an offering to say yes to the values of this progressive faith community. Yes to LGBTQ plus rights. Yes to Black and brown lives. Yes to religious freedom. Yes to our planet. And yes to democracy. This month, we will share half of our offering with Power Packs Project, a weekend nutritional program for children who are at risk of going hungry when the school lunch program is not available. The physical reminder of the plate in front of us is not present over Zoom, but we need to say yes to our values now more than ever. You can say yes to our values by texting the amount of your donation to 855-927-3685. You can also give via the Contribute tab on the homepage of our website at uucl.org or by mailing a check to our office. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Sail on, silver girl. Sail on by. Your time has come to shine, and all your dreams are on. Yes, it do. Oh, yeah.
Hi. So I asked you a question this morning, which is, can you think back and remember why it is that you first came to this place? And if today is the first time you've come here, what brings you here today? Some people perhaps come here looking for answers. I hope they find more questions than answers. But I think many people come here looking for community. And I know that I certainly did the first time I ever went to a UU church. I was looking, hoping to find my people, to find a sense of greater wholeness, knowing that there is something much greater and beyond myself that I cannot find by myself, and that I need others to discover and explore and to understand that thing and to feel it and to know it. And still some people come looking for comfort after maybe some kind of a life change. And here in UU spaces, we do not offer hard theology or definitions of what heaven or hell are, or being saved or not saved, but rather we ask questions about these things. And in doing so together, we hope that we may discover some greater truth that is beyond the questions themselves. And so I was reflecting today on a well-known parable, at least to me, something that has always been one of my favorite stories that maybe some of you have heard before. And many people know it as the parable of the spoons. I'm just curious how many of you maybe have heard that story before. I know probably at least some of you. Okay, cool. So the parable of the spoons is pretty interesting. And really, I'll just preface it by saying that the message of the parable is very simply how we treat each other matters. And so this parable is the story, well, here's my retelling of it. There once was a UU minister. And this minister sought deeply and thought deeply about deep questions in their life. And one day was sitting around and kind of thinking about the concepts of heaven and hell and how they didn't really mean much to them anymore as a Unitarian Universalist, but that they thought that they might be interesting to explore. So they sat down and they lit a candle and they did a little meditation on the idea. And they closed their eyes and first said, well, let me think about what this idea of hell could mean. And so they closed their eyes and they entered in their mind's eye a beautiful room with a large banquet table set. And on the table was this steaming, hot, piping bowl of soup. And it was the most delicious thing that they had ever smelled. And their taste buds were watering just thinking about it. But around the table, and it was a circle, the table was a circle, where sat several different people, and they all looked miserable, despite the beautiful surroundings with the beautiful meal in front of them. And the minister then looked over and noticed that all of these people sat around the table had long spoons in their hand, but their arms couldn't bend at the elbow for some reason. And so they were all, and they didn't have bowls in front of them individually. They just had the one big bowl in the middle of the table. And they were all trying to scoop the soup out with those spoons. But because their wrists were, their elbows didn't bend, they couldn't bring the spoon to their own mouths. And so they're all kind of just going at it, like, like hockey players or something with a hockey puck, trying to get at the soup. And of course they couldn't, because they were all competing against each other and fighting against each other with the sticks. And so they all went hungry. And so the minister said, no, this is too sad. This is too depressing. I want to see something else. So they sat for a second and they said, now I will think about what heaven could look like. And ironically, it was the same exact room. Same exact wonderful smelling soup and everything. Same exact mouth-watering aromas. But this time, and the people still had their arms like this, so they could not bend the spoons to their mouth. But this time they noticed that the people, instead of whacking each other's spoons out of the way, they discovered that if one person reached down into the bowl of soup, took up a spoonful, and then the other person across used their long spoon to steady the other person's spoon, they could reach across the table and feed the person sitting across from them. And so all of these people were happy and jolly and well-fed. And of course, it was because they learned the value of being there for each other and supporting each other. And so that is the story as it goes, the parable as it goes. And it shows us the idea that, as Sartre said, hell can be other people, or l'enfer c'est les autres. And introverts, anyone who needs time alone, knows this to be true sometimes, that hell can indeed be other people. But I actually want to trouble the story a little bit today, because I want to suggest that what the story leaves out, to me, is not the emphasis that hell can be other people, but that it can be the lack of other people. And I think, to me, the story would be much more scary if there were one person sat alone in that room with their arms unable to bend and a pot of soup and a spoon, and they were sat all by themselves with no one to either compete or help. And so that is really, to me, the most important point, which is not how we have the power to make each other's lives difficult, even though we do, but is it how much we need each other. I think, to me, that is how life feels sometimes today. I know that I have moved around so many times in my life, and maybe some of you have too. And being in the world today, in our modern world, where so many of us move through it alone, and especially right now, many people moving and finding themselves alone because of life transitions or divorce or death or moving for school or work or something like that. And we find ourselves in a crisis of isolation almost. And so, why do we come here to this space? I like to think of community as being like a feast, kind of just like in the story. And in fact, for me, I really did discover the power of community at a table. Some of you have heard me talk about how after I had gone through a really bad breakup once in my life, I found community through having dinner parties with people. And at one of the most lonely times in my life, I found unexpected joy by sharing with people at the table. And it was almost like, for me, it was a religious experience. At a time when I was truly alone. And so I ask you again, why did you first come here? You know, even today for me, it is hard as your minister. So my partner and I are raising a baby right now in isolation. And I know firsthand just how hard it is to go through an important moment in my life without physical support from other people. And so I think for me, the lesson is that all of us need to be, I don't use this term lightly, saviors for one another. And what do I mean by that? Well, some ministers might sit and meditate or pray to their understanding of God for the people in their congregation and for the world, to come and to save and to help and to soothe and to comfort. I don't personally believe in that kind of a God, the kind that is going to come and solve all of your problems. And so when I sit and I meditate or I pray and I sit with intentionality for what is going on in our community, all of the things that you face, I sit and I realize that instead of praying or asking for something to come and save you, that I need you to be there for each other. Let me put it this way. If you want to think about people being there for each other as meeting each other halfway, the concept of meeting halfway, you could have the distance in between two people. And if you keep meeting each other halfway, you actually, from a mathematical perspective, could never actually get there for each other. So if you're 2 feet apart, you become 1 foot apart, and then you become a half a foot and a quarter, et cetera, and it never really reaches zero. And there's always just a little bit of space preventing people from connecting. But I'd like to think about the idea of God or the concept of God as not being the thing that saves us all, but the thing that exists between people when we bridge that gap and we are there for each other. And so I tell you today that not that I need you to be there for each other. Very simply. That to me is the purpose of this community. It's for us to be there for each other. And so I invite you all to join in that process. And there are some very practical things that we can do to be there for each other. We have what is called the caring team in our congregation. Used to be called the pastoral associates. And they will be doing things like keeping people company, calling people, writing to people. And when we can be there physically showing up for people, bringing people food, giving people rides. Small things on the surface, it may seem, but those things really do add up and make a huge difference to folks. And so we must all be there for each other. But as Llewellyn Miller pointed out to me, we are all members of the caring team. By coming into this space, whether you're a member or not, by showing up here, by showing up in this spiritual space, we recognize our interdependence, how deeply we need each other, how deeply we need each other. And so you are all members of the caring team. And so I welcome you to the caring team. And I hope you'll come after the service to the room to talk more about what that means. And finally, I end with a poem from Wayne B. Aronson. It says, "Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone." Welcome to the caring team.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
This is Raven Salgado.
Amy Bishop.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean